Hey there, it's Melanie from Chasing Fi, and today we are going to talk about whether or not I regret buying rental properties without having physically toured them. Now, we did do a video tour, but obviously there are going to be some things that you don't see on a camera, especially on a cell phone. But we actually got a chance to finally tour them about 3 weeks ago or so. We were in Toledo, and our property management company was amazing. They took us in like last minute, like kind of spur of the moment. We just happened to be there. And they offered to take us to lunch, to give us a tour of the office. Like they were so nice. I'm so glad that we switched property management companies. Um, and also, we're at the point now where the first house that we purchased is going up for rent this week. So I'm super excited about that. Honestly, I was expecting with, supply chain issues and things like that and kind of there's been a lot of trouble like finding people to do work, period. Like contractors are swamped. I thought that we probably wouldn't see these properties go up for rent until about July. So I'm super pleased with the fact that we're at the end of May, beginning of June, and the first property is ready to go. But these pictures are from before any repairs were made or anything like that. We ended up putting in $10,000 for the first property, $13,000 for the second one, for just some repairs that need to be made to make the houses more hospitable. Both of them are rentable the way they are, but obviously there's always going to be something that you can do to improve to make your house more rentable. And these were improvements that we thought we planned on making anyway. So property management company set it all up for us. It was really great because they took care of all the contracting and all that. So, so easy. But I'm going to show you the houses. So this is a picture of the first house, which I really, really loved. This is a house that I would rent. I love the little area in front where you can grow stuff, and it's just got that cute little ranch look. I would totally rent this if I was single or, a young couple starting out, or even if I had a few kids, I would rent this. It's a 3 bedroom, 1 bath, and I think that it's just really cute. So it is in an area called Library Village, and it is on the same street as a preschool. So you got a little school at the end of the block. And there's also an industrial area that's not too far where the previous owner, he worked in that area. So I like the fact that this rental property is located near jobs. It's an industrial park with several different like little factories and things like that. So there are some jobs, which is something that was really important to me buying in a Midwestern city. I am from Detroit, so I know how it is. Generally, people that live in Detroit, they work outside of Detroit because there just aren't a lot of jobs there. So this is really nice because there are jobs in the area. I mean, they're not like, the highest paying jobs, but they are jobs that will allow you to afford a decent rent and even buy a house because the guy that lived here, he actually owned this house, but he worked really close by. There are some things that we want to repaired. And like I said, the property management company is handling that. Like this laundry room, definitely needs a little spiffing up. So they're going to clean it up. Like they're going to change out the cabinets and things like that. The furnace and water heater are fine, so we're not doing anything with that right now. One thing that we didn't see when we were looking at the house was the air conditioning unit because we bought the house. This is a picture from our home inspection. It is, it was winter. So if you buy houses in the winter in Toledo, you're not going to get a chance to see these units because they're going to be covered up, usually, and there's probably going to be snow. So even if they're not covered up, like at the second house, this is the air conditioning unit from the second house. And as you can see, it's not covered up, but there is snow on it, which is kind of a bad sign because you really should be covering them up. But you can see, you can't tell too much. We knew that they were old, so we expected we probably would be replacing them in the next 2 years or so. But when we got into town, I would say that this is probably the only, you just got to expect this. You're on a cell phone, it's winter, there are going to be some things that you just don't see. So when we got into town, this is what the air conditioning unit, this is the one from the second house. This is what it looks like. And my husband, like he works with HVAC equipment and things like that. And he's just like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, oh my gosh, this definitely needs to be replaced. And it still works, but it will need to be replaced relatively soon, I think. Um, Something that I've noticed about Utah is that people, like, there are codes and different things, obviously, I don't know anything about them. Well, not a lot. For equipment and things like that when they need to be replaced and how they need to look and things like that. In Utah, I would say people are very, very good about replacing equipment before it just dies. Partially because a lot of people here can do their own work. They don't need to call somebody in. Like, we got a new HVAC system, and well, my brother-in-law, he owns an HVAC company, so he did it, and then my husband is able to maintain it. So, like a lot of people here, they're able to do those things on their own. So they do it when it needs, before it's an emergency. I would say in the Midwest, based on rentals that I lived in and also just my life, there aren't a lot of people who, in my experience, just do these things on their own. So they usually have to call in a company, and it's going to cost more money and things like that. So this is the way that the air conditioning unit looks on the second home, but the unit on the first home is very much like this. It is almost identical. So that means that we're probably going to need two HVAC systems, and that would be the number one drawback of buying houses online without touring them. With that said, one of the reasons that we decided to buy without flying out, because originally that was our goal, we were going to find houses and, kind of fly out and see them. But I mean, if you've looked at any airline prices recently, that airline prices have just been going up and up and up. And if we could get away with not going there, we were going to do it. So, so we felt comfortable buying in Toledo because it is a Midwestern city. It's not one that I was hanging out in all the time, but I am familiar with Toledo because I grew up in Detroit and then I lived in Ypsilanti for a long time. I actually used to work every now and then in Toledo. I worked for a company and we had a branch down there, and they had trouble staffing it. So every now and then I would head down and work that office. So I am somewhat familiar with Toledo. I know that it's your basic Midwestern town. Like, you're going to have some areas that are kind of dangerous. You're going to have some areas that are run down. You want to look for places where people are renting because it's a nicer part of town. This is definitely a nicer part of town, and the property management company was telling us that this is the place where they have the most rentals in the city proper. So we felt confident buying houses in this area of Toledo, and that's why we moved forward without actually seeing the houses in person. Now, there were, obviously you show up, like the house that I really like, the first one, the ranch, and it's cute. I like it, and I would live here. But when we got there were a few things that, like, there's a popcorn ceiling. We're not really into that. It was a little chipped, so it has to be encapsulated. Not a big deal, but we were trying to stay away from that. We knew that going in, so not a big deal. But when you get there, it looks a little bit different. I would probably, eventually I want the baseboards and things like that updated. No, they don't have to be like the top of the line, but I want them updated a little bit. They're definitely old. So things like that. The second house, this is the second house. And basically, this style of house, it's like on the outside, the way that it looks, it's not my favorite, but this is a style that's very popular in Toledo. And in fact, we found a lot of houses that were built like this right in this area. And so people are used to seeing them. So they're not going to be like me. And I'm like, oh, I don't like the outside. I probably wouldn't rent it. But the inside, I do like it because it has like a front room that you walk into. It's got a little staircase that goes up. The kitchen is a nice size. And then it has like the basement and everything, all that. So, and the backyard is amazing. So if I had a family, this might be a place that I rent because the backyard is just great. I mean, it just seems to go on forever. Your kids could run out there and it's almost like they're at a little park, you put some nice toys back there and they would be tired out and they come in, they'd be ready for bed. So this is a good rental, I think. I know it was a rental before. It was owned by a couple for about 20 years and they rented it and kept it rented. Um, but if I had it to do over, I might go with a different house just because of the street that it's on. It's not a super busy street, but it's a two-lane road that has a decent amount of traffic. So it means that when you're pulling out of the drive, you have to pull into traffic. So you got to wait for it to clear. No, it's not like a packed road or anything, but I lived on a road like this in Michigan, but it was a one way and it had four lanes. So yes, you had to pull out into traffic, but you were able to do that. But even with that, I think that this will be a great rental. Like I said, this area seems to be kind of, the rental haven, and I love the backyard. The backyard is great. We're getting new carpet in the upstairs. Eventually, we're going to go with luxury vinyl plank, but just to get started with renting, we're going to go with carpet. The basement, we went down there, and this is something that we definitely didn't see. And I don't think the property management company even saw this, but my husband, you put him in the basement, he's going to find all types of things. He said, that's the secret place. That's where all the secrets about the house are at, the basement and the attic. So we went in the basement and he's looking around at things that I don't know, like he's looking at the drains, and one of the drains had some ants on it. So there was a little bit of, little ant infestation. So we're getting that taken care of. But that was something that, we definitely didn't see on camera in the basement. It's dark. The basement looked pretty good to us, and it is in decent shape, but we wouldn't have seen that, We wouldn't have been like, hey, can you put the camera to the drain? Like you have to get pretty close to even notice it. So, just things like that, you're not going to see on camera. So if you're buying a house, without being there physically and seeing the things the way that you want to see them. Our realtor was really great. He got down on the floor. He showed us all these nooks and crannies, but you're not going to, like, if you're like, oh, what's that? And you want to spend 20 minutes looking at something, it's not going to happen. The realtor doesn't have time for that. So, buying houses without physically touring them, not ideal, but it actually worked out pretty well for us, and we are very happy with what we purchased. And at this point moving forward, sure, we would consider buying houses again without having physically toured them. Although our next house will probably be from the auction. We really want to check out some auction sites and see if we can pick up some properties, for cheap, that we know we have to put money into them, but properties for cheap that we could pick up for maybe 20,000, maybe 30,000, and flip them, turn them into nice rentals. So no, I don't regret buying houses that I hadn't toured physically in person. It actually worked out pretty well, but I'll add the caveat that, like, I would not buy a house that I hadn't toured in, like, say, a town that I'd never been to or I was unfamiliar with. Like, I wouldn't buy a house that I'd never stepped foot in Des Moines, because I don't know anything about Des Moines, Iowa. I've only driven through it. I've not spent any time there, so I'm not familiar. So I would have to see that house in person, in the neighborhood and things like that. So that's my story. You can buy houses without physically touring them, but I do recommend having some criteria before you move forward with that, or else you could end up with something and you're like, oh, I didn't know the neighborhood was like this, or, or something else that you just can't see on camera. So just something to keep in mind. All right, that is all for now. And the next video, I'm super excited to give an update on my garden, because as you know, I live in drought-stricken Utah, so stay tuned for that. We had a bunch of surprise rain and snow in the mountains, so I was super excited. It looks like we're, like this is a late storm. We have been experiencing rain from Saturday night to Monday morning, off and on. It's been really great. So I'll tell you about that, because to be honest, I almost pulled the plug on our garden this year, and I'll tell you why in the next video. All right, I hope everyone's doing well. See you in the next one.